Hello guys, and welcome to this video. Now, after making a few videos about dog breeding and how dog breeding is animal abuse in my opinion, and how much actually the dogs are suffering from that, I thought enough whining about the dogs suffering, and let's go back to people suffering because of dogs. And this is not going to be about the barking, which is bad enough in itself, but I would like to go into a few of the diseases that humans can actually catch from dogs. And there are more diseases than we can get from dogs than you might actually think. I mean, there are certainly more than I thought. So I would like to go through a quick list of what kind of general diseases you can get from a dog, and then I would like to go into two of these diseases specifically, because they are just, in my opinion, the most horrific ones of the list of diseases that you can get. So the general list that I have here is from a website called jollypets.com, so that nobody can tell me that I'm using sources by dog haters. This is a website, I mean, you can have a look at it yourself. This is a website that is definitely created by dog lovers, so they will certainly try to paint the picture as favorably as possible. So there is an article called 10 Diseases You Can Catch from Your Dog. Now, I'm not going to go into their kind of cuddly blah blah about how great dogs are. I'm just going straight to the list of the diseases. Number one is a disease caused by a protozoal parasite called Giardia. Now, Giardia is a protozoal parasite, often from contaminated drinking water. That's not the best English, but anyway. Infected dogs can serve as a source for humans, as can infected humans serve as a source for the dogs. Although very difficult to be sure that your dog never drinks from puddles that could not contain the fecal matter of infected wildlife, you can treat and filter water when you're hiking and camping, etc. blah blah. Okay, so the symptoms in humans, it's diarrhea. Second one, roundworm. Roundworm is technically zoonotic and can cause horrific skin and ocular lesions in affected humans. In our culture, with excellent hygiene and careful parasite control for our dogs, we don't hear of these cases often. Cases are thought to be higher in urban areas where population density puts children more likely to come into contact with the feces of infected pets. Okay, symptoms in humans: cough, shortness of breath, abdominal pain, and blood in the stool. Sounds like fun. Number 3, MRSA. That's an acronym standing for methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Is more of a problem from humans to pets. These infections are most commonly found in ears and wounds. Symptoms in humans generally start as small red bumps that resemble pimples, boils, or spider bites. These can quickly turn into deep, painful abscesses that require surgical draining. Sometimes the bacteria remain confined to the skin. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank God. Number 4, sarcoptic mange, or mange, I don't know. Often called scabies, mange is caused by a tiny mite that burrows deeply into the skin, creating severe itching and irritation. Secondary infections are common for infected dogs, and it is not only contagious between dogs, but also can infect humans. Symptoms in humans: sarcoptic mange causes a rash of red bumps, similar to mosquito bites. Humans cannot get demodectic mange from dogs, whatever that is. Salmonella Salmonella is a bacteria that can be found in contaminated and undercooked food. It can make people and dogs very sick with GI signs, so gastrointestinal signs, which is why great care must be taken if feeding your dog a raw diet. Symptoms in humans: abdominal pain, fever, vomiting, headache, and nausea. Number 6, ringworm. Dermatophytosis, better known as ringworm, is a fungal infection of the skin. So it's not a worm actually. It is seen in both dogs and cats, although cats are more likely to be asymptomatic carriers. Symptoms in people: red circular patches on the skin. Number 7, leptospirosis. Leptospirosis is a bacterial infection that is spread through contact with the urine of an infected animal. Contaminated standing water is thought to be a source. Symptoms in people: high fever, headache, chills, muscle aches, vomiting, yellow skin, yellow eyes, red eyes, abdominal pain. Number 8, rabies. Rabies is a virus that can infect mammals. It is spread in the saliva or contact with infected tissues. Suspected rabies, or even any human bitten by an unvaccinated dog, must be reported to the health department. There are very few human cases that have survived once the symptoms have evidenced themselves. Symptoms in humans: temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is above 37 degrees Celsius, chills, fatigue, problems sleeping, lack of appetite, headache, irritability, anxiety, sore throat, vomiting. Around half of people will also experience pain and tingling sensation at the site of the infection. Well, they forgot to mention that in the symptoms that it's actually 100% deadly. I mean, they said it further up, but okay. Number 9, hookworms. Hookworms suck on the intestinal lining of dogs, causing a potentially life-threatening blood loss, especially in puppies. The eggs found in pet feces could transfer through the skin in pet owners if you happened to step on droppings with your bare feet in the backyard. Well, they forget to mention that it can also happen when you're just, let's say, children play outside in the sandpit, and when you have dog feces in the sandpit, then they're just going to touch it with their hands. But all right. So symptoms in humans: often none, but could include an itchy rash, cough, wheezing, stomach pain, anemia, or loss of appetite. And number 10, tapeworms. Tapeworms are flat, segmented worms that live in the intestines of some animals. Animals can become infected with these parasites when grazing in pastures or drinking contaminated water. Symptoms in humans are nausea, weakness, diarrhea, abdominal pain, hunger or loss of appetite, fatigue, weight loss, and rice-like pieces in the stool. So that was the first article. Now, the first disease that I would like to go into a little bit more in detail was number 2 on the list here, which was the so-called roundworm. Now, remember what they said about it is that in our culture, with excellent hygiene and careful parasite control for our dogs, we don't hear of these cases often. Well, I would like to, that sounds very positive, but let's have a closer look at these roundworms. So these roundworms are actually an extremely nasty thing, which is not mentioned in their list. I have a short description here by a different website, which has the weird name petpooskidoo.com. And the article is called "Dog Waste Causes Blindness in Humans." So this is an article about these roundworms or toxocariasis. Now, toxocariasis is an illness found in humans that occurs when they are infected with parasitic roundworms originating from either the fecal matter of dogs and foxes or cats. Although most people might display symptoms similar to the flu, there are certain instances where the illness can turn into a more severe form known as ocular toxocariasis that has the potential to cause blindness. Although toxocariasis can infect humans, the most common victims are actually children, for two reasons. One being that children have a weaker immune system than adults, and the other being that they are the ones that tend to place their hands on the ground and in the dirt while playing outside. There's a lot more bacteria right outside your front door than you would like, particularly if you own a pet. Now, one small interjection from my side. Now, toxocariasis is not a bacteria, so I'm not really sure why they why they are going on about bacteria. Bacteria are not the problem here. Okay, like that was my interjection. Now let's go on. Dogs, especially since they don't bury their stool, can leave your yard quite a contagious place if not cleaned properly and scooped on a regular basis. While showing little evidence, parasites can invade your dog's body, live in his digestive system, and produces eggs, which are eventually shed through the feces, contaminating the soil and water sources around it. The eggs become viable embryos after about 2 to 4 weeks in the environment, usually in dirt or sand, and survive up to 2 years due to its high resistance to temperature changes and chemicals. In that time, the embryos can lay up to an alarming 200,000 eggs per day. A human can accidentally contract a parasite when touching the ground outdoors following an unintentional touch of the face. The parasite may then enter the mouth, travel down the intestines, and feed off the host while reproducing. The lesser symptoms this causes may be flu-like, such as coughing, fever, headaches, stomach aches, and diarrhea. Others may have harsher experiences such as migraines, joint pain, and asthma attacks. In the UK, toxocariasis causes partial blindness in around 50 children per year, while in America ocular toxocariasis was discovered in 68 cases within 1 year, and an estimated 70% resulted in blindness. The average age of the affected is 8.5, and the locations are spread out across the country. The number of infected become much higher in other parts of the world, such as Colombia, where an unbelievable 81% of children have been infected, possibly due to the lack of veterinary care and the number of stray dogs that reside there. London, 2010. Amy Langdon, a 2-year-old toddler, was enjoying a day out at a gated children's park when suddenly she slipped and fell into a pile of dog feces. Before her mother could retrieve a wipe from her purse to clean her daughter's face, Amy wiped her own eye in an effort to remove the unpleasant substance from her face. Although Amy did not have any immediate reactions to the incident, the very next morning Amy woke up screaming in pain. Her eye had turned purple and swollen shut literally overnight. She was quickly rushed to the hospital. The doctors found that she had contracted toxocariasis and that the parasitic worms from the dog feces had crawled up to her eye. She was promptly given antibiotics, but even with such rapid action, Amy was left with scratches on her cornea, causing her to be 75% blind in her left eye. All of this was because a dog owner did not pick up after his dog. Although Amy's symptoms were evident and occurred shortly after having contact with dog waste, this is not always the case. In fact, it can take years for a parasite to make itself known. Now, at the end of the article, they had to write, "This article is not intended to make you scared of your dog. Although toxocariasis can potentially have serious consequences, it is rare. A scooped yard is a safer yard for you and your family." All right, so you see that they are trying to paint it as positively as possible, but look, the facts speak for themselves. And like, even you can say now, yeah, okay, it's just, 60 children in a year in all of the UK, or how many it was, is not a very high number. Yeah, well, if it's your child, or if it is actually you yourself, then I'm sure that you would take it more seriously. It's just unbelievable. And notice that in the story of Amy, they were talking about, it was actually a gated playground for children, where she fell and where she slipped into a pile of dog feces. So the playground was gated, but not even that is enough to keep those goddamn dogs and their owners out of that. I mean, these people are just unbelievable, really. And now, I don't really care if you are a dog owner. Like, every time I talk to a dog owner, it's always the same story that I hear. They're all playing like the outraged, perfect dog owner, and every single one of them is always going on about, yeah, they would never do that, and they always pick up the feces and the dog shit, and yeah, it's just terrible. Like, these are just a few examples, a few exceptions of dog owners. Now, if you walk through our city, actually here, then you see immediately that these are not just a few exceptions. Like, when I walk around here, just out of fun, I sometimes count the dog shit that is lying around. And here, you can go to any street and you will find a dog pile lying there at an average of every 3 meters. And I'm not exaggerating. So it's just statistically impossible that these are just a few exceptions. Like, if these were just a few exceptions, then they would have to have dogs that take a dump every 10 meters like 500 times a day. That's just statistically impossible that you have such a dog. So no, it's not just exceptions, it is actually the majority. And I even see it from my window that the dog owners that walk up and down the street here, when they have the impression that nobody is watching, none of them picks up the dog shit. None of them. They always pick it up when they see that somebody is actually close to them and somebody's watching them. Yeah, then very reluctantly they pull out the plastic bag of their pocket. But if they feel unobserved, then yeah, they just don't give a shit. Now, one more thing that I would like to say is that picking up the shit is actually, as it is presented here as the absolutely 100% safe solution for this problem, picking up the shit is actually not the safest solution, because everybody who has ever worked in microbiology, you know exactly that as soon as the dog feces touches the ground and you have all these eggs in the dog feces, even if you pick the dog shit up, like, you already probably have hundreds or even thousands of eggs stuck to the ground or to the grass, and you would have to, it's impossible to really get rid of it. Even if you pick it up, then you will still have loads of particles that you just smeared to the ground, and you would actually have to go over it with a flamethrower if you really want to get rid of the parasites. So picking up is not is definitely, it's a good start, but it's not the solution. It's not going to eliminate the problem, and you will still have probably thousands of parasite eggs on the ground that they will just stick to your shoes. You know, every time you walk over that, they stick to your shoes, and you will inevitably later touch your shoes. I mean, if you take off your shoes, you will inevitably touch them. And every doctor and every microbiologist knows that as soon as you have something on your fingers, it will inevitably also end up in your mouth. Okay, so much about that. The toxocariasis, or the roundworms. Now, the second disease I would like to go into from this list is rabies. Now, rabies, as you perhaps know already, is an absolutely horrific disease caused by a virus. And I would like to read an article by the World Health Organization, which you can find on their website, about rabies. So, key facts. Rabies is a vaccine-preventable viral disease which occurs in more than 150 countries and territories. It causes tens of thousands of deaths every year, mainly in Asia and Africa, 40% of whom are children under 15 years of age. Dogs are the main source of human rabies deaths, contributing up to 99% of all rabies transmissions to humans. Rabies can be prevented through vaccination of dogs and prevention of dog bites. After a potential exposure of people to a rabid animal, they can seek post-exposure prophylaxis, PEP, which consists of immediate, thorough wound washing with soap and water for 15 minutes, a series of rabies vaccinations and, if indicated, administration of rabies immunoglobulin or monoclonal antibodies, which can be life-saving. Now, the overview. Rabies is a vaccine-preventable zoonotic viral disease affecting the central nervous system. Once clinical symptoms appear, rabies is virtually 100% fatal. In up to 99% of cases, domestic dogs are responsible for rabies virus transmission to humans. Children between the age of 5 and 14 years are frequent victims. Now, then they go on a little bit about the costs of this disease, but what I would like to say here, or where I would like to continue, is about this the post-exposure prophylaxis. Now, every year, more than 29 million people worldwide receive post-exposure prophylaxis. Imagine 29 million people. This is estimated to prevent hundreds of thousands of rabies deaths annually. Globally, the economic burden of dog-mediated rabies is estimated at $8.6 billion per year, in addition to uncalculated psychological trauma for individuals and communities. Prevention. Eliminating rabies in dogs. Vaccinating dogs, including puppies, is the most cost-effective strategy for preventing rabies in people because it stops the transmission at its source. Moreover, dog vaccination reduces the need for post-exposure prophylaxis. Education on dog behavior and bite prevention for both children and adults is an essential extension of rabies vaccination programs and can decrease both the incidence of human rabies and the financial burden of treating dog bites. Symptoms. The incubation period for rabies is typically 2 to 3 months, but may vary from 1 week to 1 year, depending on factors such as the location of virus entry and the viral load. Initial symptoms of rabies include generic signs like fever, pain, and unusual or unexplained tingling, pricking, or burning sensations at the wound site. As the virus moves to the central nervous system, progressive and fatal inflammation of the brain and spinal cord develops. Clinical rabies in people can be managed, but very rarely cured, and not without severe neurological deficits. There are 2 forms of rabies. Furious rabies results in hyperactivity, excitable behavior, hallucinations, a lack of coordination, hydrophobia, which is fear of water, and aerophobia, which is fear of drafts or of fresh air. Death occurs after a few days due to cardiorespiratory arrest. The second form of rabies is paralytic rabies, accounts for about 20% of the total number of human cases. This form of rabies runs a less dramatic and usually longer course than the furious form. Muscles gradually become paralyzed, starting from the wound site. A coma slowly develops, and eventually death occurs. The paralytic form of rabies is often misdiagnosed, contributing to the underreporting of the disease. Now, so much about these diseases, guys. So when I read this stuff, then I just really start to think that why are we actually doing this to ourselves? I really don't understand this. This is, besides the epidemic barking problem, we look at these diseases. I mean, they are just insane. I mean, rabies is such an unbelievably horrific disease, and also those roundworms. I mean, like, why do people have to become blind just because those dog owners are such wankers? Really, I just don't get it, really. And why are we doing this to ourselves? We wouldn't accept this kind of disadvantage and of danger, of physical danger, from any other pet. We, like, absolutely not. But we have just become absolutely mental with this dog mania. Like, they can, no matter what they cause, what kind of trouble and what kind of diseases and what kind of suffering, we just accept absolutely everything. We just accept absolutely everything. And now, even if you think about the article by the World Health Organization that was going on about vaccinating the dogs and vaccinating the puppies. Now, now we have to spend billions of dollars or euros on vaccinating animals that are just unnecessary, totally superfluous and unnecessary. It's not animal livestock that is important for our survival or anything. They are just not, I mean, I'm sorry, they're just not worth these costs. It's just insane. And like, especially with the rabies is often transmitted by stray dogs. Now, every normal civilized country is trying to have the stray dog population either under control, or they even try to eliminate it completely. I mean, I've lived in countries in Europe where you just don't have any stray dogs. Like, the stray dog population is zero, absolutely zero. And if there is one that shows up, then it will be caught by animal control immediately, and they will look for the owner, and that's about it. But you have other countries here in Europe, like, for instance, Hungary and Romania and many countries at the Mediterranean, where you have a huge problem with stray dogs. And, the authorities, they just, when they actually try to get the problem under control, then you immediately have all these animal rights groups and all these activists coming, who are just going to whine and to block the efforts as much as they can. Now, the only reasonable solution for this is that the stray dogs, they have to be caught and they have to be neutered, or if they are just beyond saving, then you just have to cull them. You just have to cull them. There's nothing else you can do. But, even if the authorities, if they were trying to do their jobs, you can be absolutely sure that they would immediately have the animal rights activists at their throats. And no, we have to, oh my God, how can you subject all these poor animals to this pain? Like, even with the vaccination, like, oh, and you can be sure that probably some idiot is going to make a video about it, how a puppy is crying after being vaccinated against rabies, And then you can be sure that on YouTube, probably channels like the Dodo are going to turn this into a video which millions of people will watch, and then they will all be outraged about animal cruelty. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the stupidity behind this. And that's I'm just really, I would challenge any of these so-called animal rights activists. These are not animal rights activists. What they do is they just keep the cycle of suffering going because they think with their emotions, and if they would just think rationally, then they would understand that the only way to prevent the future suffering of generations of stray dogs would be to just eliminate the problem once and for all, which means, yeah, you have to neuter the ones that are there, and the ones that are totally sick beyond help, they have to be culled. And, release them from their misery. But no, no, not for the animal rights activists. They look into the eyes of the poor puppies, and then they forget every rational thinking and every logic that they have ever had, if they had any. So yeah, the problem is just not going to get solved as long as you have these idiot pseudo animal rights activists that are just like, the only thing they do is they just keep the cycle of suffering going, and it's causing people to die. It's causing people to die by dog transmitted diseases. But those animal activists, they often just don't care about people. And you can often hear when you listen to these animal rights activists that they just outright hate people. Like, as much as they pretend to love animals, they just hate people. And they think that people have less worth than any animal. And so they just don't care about people dying, even if it's small children. They just don't care. So yeah, after listening to all of this, I just don't understand how anybody can still go on about dogs being a great thing, and that, yeah, everybody needs dogs. Like here, 70% of the houses have a dog, at least one dog. Yeah, it's a fantastic idea, really. And I even see my neighbors here. Like last year in summer, the neighbor he built a sand pit for his grandchild, and I see the child playing in that sand pit, and at the same time I see their German Shepherd walking around in the sand pit as well and shitting into it. And they're just too ignorant to know that this actually is a problem, and that it could have severe consequences for the child. But hey, I'm just a dumb neighbor, and I'm considered the weird guy here in the street because I don't like dogs. Okay, suit yourself then. Well, guys, I don't know what you think about this. Perhaps I'm overreacting, I don't know. Or perhaps I should just be indifferent to all of this. But I just can't help it, really. It's just insane. It's just insane. So thank you for listening to this. Have a good day and take care. Goodbye.